We started? Right.
Yeah.
I'm Megan, if you don't know, and I'm gonna be like talking through like this essay writing guide, just to help you guys a little bit, because I know with first years it's very difficult. You've like need a little bit of extra help, especially this year, and like we all needed it, so we're just passing that on. This isn't, I just want to say before we start that this isn't like a definitive guide. Like this isn't like written like you have to do this like step by step. This is just what me and like other people that I've talked to like have found useful, and hopefully you all find useful as well. But like obviously different people have different like ways of working, different strategies, things like that. And also we know that the first year questions are a little bit different this year, but we're gonna like, this essay writing guide is kind of just like a general overview of like how to structure essays and things. So we will, if you have more questions at the end about like specifics about the first year questions, we will like answer those. But this is more like, will help, but it's also like more of a general thing of like, you know, using this information to help you. We go on to the next one.
Yeah.
Oh, this is just, yeah. So this is a very rough timeline of like what you guys have to expect in first year, because obviously you've never done it before, so you don't know. But like, so the start of the semester, essay questions are released. They've already been released. Like I think it was a couple of weeks ago now. And we have a formative assessment in first and second years. I don't know about third and fourth, but I'm assuming most people here are first or second year maybe. And they have a formative assessment in October, which is basically like a plan of your essay. And then the essay is due the middle of November. And then you finish your lectures at the end of November. And then in the middle of December, you have like an exam period. So that is the basic structure of the semester. If you want to go on to the next one. Okay, so choosing a question. A very daunting start to this, and it's very like, it is very overwhelming when you first start. Like, but that's released so far in advance. I just say like, take your time. Don't think like, oh, they've been released, so I have to like now start. Like, take your time. Like, if you look at them a week or two after they've been released, and like, oh, it's moving.
Oh, sorry.
Go, yeah, if you could, yeah, that's okay. Thanks. And generally I would narrow it down to one or two that you find the most interesting, like just initially, just off like instincts. Oh, that's really interesting. Okay, write that down, like one or two that you find interesting, and then do like a little bit of brief research into the both. Don't worry if you're late, it's fine. We only just started. So yeah, when I say brief, I mean like literally Google like the artwork or the time period and just find out like, oh, is this going to be interesting, or like what can I actually get from this? Yeah, so pick apart the question. Does it ask you about artworks, what art movements and things like that, and like what you have to specifically look at? They don't need to be in depth at all, just different ideas that you can like look at and then decide, you know, initially what is the best one for me. And a top tip I found was don't pick the question that you're like, wow, that sounds really smart and complicated, I really want to start do that, because you know it'll make me seem like, oh my god, I'm so smart. Like I get that, like first going into first year you're like, okay, university level, it has to be smart, but don't, just find what's interesting to you. Don't worry about like being smart, because they are all like along the same, they've all been picked for the same level.
Definitely to second what Megan just said, all the questions are good questions. Definitely pick the one that you find the most interesting and fun, because you're going to have to spend a lot of time reading about it and writing about it. And it's like, I think proven, you probably realized it, that if you enjoy what you're doing, it's going to come off of that in the essay. If you're passionate about the subject, the essay is going to be better. And also you can sound smart in talking about anything. So definitely do what you want to do. You chose this course because you like art history, presumably. So pick what you're most interested in.
Yeah, if you pick a boring one, you'll get bored within the first week, and then it'll be such a drag to have to actually do the essay. So yeah, definitely that. Okay, next question, next slide. Yeah, so this is just like a general like organization that I follow, because I am massive on like time management, and it gets me through everything. And if you aren't naturally organized, this is just kind of like a rough plan. So the first 2 weeks I said like deciding on a question and creating like a rough plan of your structure. So literally just like what artworks I think I'm going to do, and like, or like what artwork, and then what are the main points, just like, you know, very basic level. And then week 3 and 4, I normally spend researching. So I would say like I did about 15 sources in my first year essays, but I think like it's not about the quantity, it's about the quality of your sources. So if you're using them right, then that's, you know, that's what is needed. And that, if you break that down, that's literally like 1 or 2 sources a day. So you don't need to use all of that for your essay, but it's good to break it down and be like, okay, for 2 weeks I'm going to do research, and then yeah, get some like 1 or 2 sources a day. And then week 5 and week 6 a majority like writing, and then referencing, checking through it, adding illustrations and bibliography and things like that, which if you break it down and give yourself time is literally like 300, 400 words a day, which is nothing when you think about it. It sounds like a lot, but it's not a lot when you break it down. And then so yeah, that's like the 6-week plan, but obviously that's just what I do, and like it's not definitive, but it is helpful to think about it in that way. If we do the next one. Okay, research. Okay, so this is the real like a bit overwhelming part when you first get to university, because you've never had to like properly look at academic sources before, and it's just quite overwhelming. And I'd say like you don't need to find every single bit of information that is out there on your subject. Like you would be there for years if you tried to do that. So don't try and do that. Just start with like basics, and then so you know specific questions, well, basic questions like time period, movements at that time, what's the artwork, and like how is it, like who was it made by, things like that. And just do like reading on the context to start off with. So I like if I have, so now my essay is about the Enlightenment, so I literally put into like JSTOR or just Google like the Enlightenment in Scotland and just like see what comes up. And don't use like random websites for research, but like if it's like an article that you find and it's like got a, you know, an author, publication and things like that, then you can use it. But I just say that. So yeah, so pick like,
and also as like sorry to interrupt, also as a way to start finding sources, because when you search on JSTOR and stuff, you're going to find so much stuff.
Yeah.
Start with the course resource list, because whatever essay question you have, there's going to be information about that in the course resource list on like where you get your weekly readings. So go on there and start by going and clicking on the further readings and starting reading those, because those are going to be kind of the foundational texts that the person that like the teacher thinks are most important. So start there. Definitely as a starting place, and then branch out. And also as you read, you find like citings to, you'll find like this author cited this work, I can go find that text. And also your topic will likely change slightly as you research. You'll find what you're more interested in.
Yeah, that's a really good one actually. If you get like a really good text, if you go down to the bottom and see the notes, and then see who like they've cited and used like quite frequently, which means that it's probably a good like foundational text for you to use. And so I've listed a few useful sites for you, because I took me ages to figure out what DiscoverEd was in Edinburgh, and it's just basically a place where you can find academic journals and books in the library. And then I've also listed like the libraries. We actually got an email today saying our architecture library is open again, so that's really good if you can get out and book to go to the library. There's some good books in there, and obviously the main library. But I think that this year, more than ever, they are going to be like more lenient if you have to like isolate and stuff, and we're just using academic sources and things like that on ebooks and online books. So yeah, I wouldn't worry about that. Just it's finding like good sources that back up your argument, I would say. Do you mind going to the next one, Fiona? Yeah, and then organization of your research is massive, like a big thing. And it's not massive and scary, like as in you like, it's just good to know. And I wish someone had told me when I first started. So if you find like an interesting article or book reference, you have to, like, if you write it down in bibliography form, and I'll tell you what the bibliography form is later in the presentation, like at the start of your page, and so you have it there and you can just copy and paste it into your bibliography if you use it later. And then under your referenced book, begin like reading through the information and do like it pages by pages. So if you put like page 1 and then read page 1, and anything you find goes under page 1 section, then that is really useful, because you don't want to have to like go back to the library, find that book, find that page that you did it, because you will need the page numbers for referencing. So always remember to put the page numbers, because it saves you a lot of trouble later on if you don't. And then also, just a thing I like to do is color code the information. So I do like my main points and like an artwork or something. And then when I go through all my information, I color code it. So I know that everything in like pink or everything in green is like one argument or another. And then when I go to write up my essay, I can just look at all the pink points for the first paragraph and be like, okay, all the pink things, I can use quotes, information from all of that section, which is really helpful, because once you've done all your research, it just becomes like a mass of like words on a document, and it's very confusing to go through it. So you have to like just organize it a little bit so that it's easier for you when you're just writing it up, basically. So yeah, that's organization.
Page number things, you should really do this for when you're footnoting, because like I do this whenever I'm reading any text, even if it's not for an essay. I just put a page number and then kind of like tab, like do some spaces in, and then paste like the quote from the book or write my notes. So then when you're writing your essay, you can like put in that information, and then you have the page number and the source right there. Yeah. Like it's already there for you. So definitely this will save you a lot of time.
Yeah, it does. Okay, next one. That's okay. Okay, so introductions, always the hardest part. I would just say, like, take the information you've got from the question, or like, you know, the first years have like artworks and then they've got like 3 questions underneath. Take that and kind of like reword it in a way to create like an opening sentence, because I always find the opening sentence is the hardest one. So I would like, so for example, like if you're doing about I know that one of the examples is on 6th century mosaic, and so you'd put like a little bit of background about like the 6th century mosaics and what they were used for, and then maybe like outline your 3 points, and then the way you're going to do this is through like analysis of this artwork. So like kind of, I know BCA is, I don't know if it's a university thing. I learned it in A-level and GCSE, but it's very good for background, controversy, argument, for your introduction. So you outline it, you say why this may be contested, but then you reassert your argument that you're going to do, so that it sets out the points for your essay, and it's so much easier then for people to follow your essays and like understand what you're trying to say, and then it will help you have like a clearer argument. So I've just listed like qualities of a first class introduction. So opinion from historical figure, that's optional. Try maybe, like I would actually say, don't try and just like shoe wedge one in there, because they want your like opening opinion to start off with, but like sometimes they are helpful to like reassert your opinion, but don't try and like shoehorn one in there if it doesn't work. And then a definition of what you're studying. So like, you know, if it's about like mosaics or something, like maybe like define them a little bit, or like, you know, things like that. And then counter arguments, like very briefly though, don't like go into it, and then just outline what argument you're going to do. And then it doesn't need to be big, it's just like no more than 500 words. It's quite concise, like just a little bit of an introduction into what you're going to do. So yeah, if you go on to the next one. If that's
and then also what I found is I often end up rewriting my introduction after I've written the rest of the essay, because after you reread your whole essay and you've written it all, your introduction might need to be changed, or you might have a better understanding of the subject because you've written so much about it. And definitely what you were saying, give like a roadmap for your essay, so that, because the graders have to read these so quickly, so your introduction should be strong and should tell the grader, make it easy for the grader, tell them what you're going to do in the essay and be clear. So
yeah, the main body of your paragraph, it's easier, I find, to structure them into like arguments, and then so it doesn't mean that one argument is one paragraph and then you just leave that argument and forget about it, but it's like if all like you focus mainly on one argument in one paragraph and then kind of just like reference them a little bit throughout. So I've got here like points. What is the point of this paragraph? Are you focusing on specific words, or are you exploring viewpoints? Not a lot, just like max 2 sentences, just like a little point. And then the arguments and evidence, and then maybe a counter argument so that you're like showing other historical opinions, like a quote or something. And then you need to like reassert your argument so that they know that that's what you are going to be looking at. You don't want to like float between loads of different arguments. You want to be like, well, this is what I think, and then this is also another opinion, but still I believe that this is like what needs to like be looked at and what is my argument for this. And then link sentences, they don't need to be like, I used to think they would be like a big profound statement like at the end, like, oh my god, that's so amazing, that last sentence, that was beautiful, she's just defined everything in that last sentence. But it really doesn't. It just needs to like reiterate basically the point of the paragraph and like kind of just, you know, say again what your argument was and link it to the essay question so that you're constantly referring back to it in that last sentence. Yeah, do you mind going to the next one, Fiona?
Yeah, there's a little question in the chat that's about,
Oh yeah.
can you see the chat? It's about kind of arguments versus like analysis, I think.
Is it quite easy to find an argument about, is that the right one?
Mm-hmm.
About an art piece, what if a piece doesn't have a lot of debate, controversy around it? It doesn't always have to be like a debate. It could be like, okay, so what are the main like features of Christian art, and then just do like 3 different features or like things like that. It doesn't have to be like, well, this person disagrees, this person disagrees. Like it's just main like points that you're saying. And like there will be like, there's sometimes there isn't a lot of debate, but there's always like different variations of an opinion through different like historians. I don't know if that sounds a bit too like, I don't know if that answers your question like, yeah. Is that okay?
Also for your structure, like you have to see what structure works for your essay.
Yeah.
Like you might have an essay where it makes more sense to talk about the 2 or 3 artworks individually,
yeah.
In an order, and then inserting your arguments like between those, or you talk about like the different ideas and talk about each artwork within those. So you just have to like experiment with that, but kind of it will depend essay to essay. There's no one way to do this. Yeah. There's lots of ways, which is fun, but also sometimes scary. So
yeah, so it's not necessarily an argument and like a debate, it's just your like points and like, you know, what you're trying to explain through this essay, basically. Helps. The conclusion. Okay, you're trying to link all of your essay points together in like a clear argument, which can be a bit overwhelming sometimes because you're like, oh, I've got to like wrap this whole thing up and like, you know, again, like make it a really profound statement. But I would just say like, keep your arguments clear. Don't try and add any new points or information in this or any quotes, like unless they're like a very, very like enhance the argument and like, you know, are really good quotes. I would not try and like, you know, the same as the introduction, shoehorn a quote in there. Like try and keep it like your argument just clear and just what you've already said. I would say again, I know it's basic, but the same with the introduction, but with a Geon structure. Again, I don't know if people had this in other schools, and obviously people are like from different countries and stuff, but Geon is judgment, explanation, on the other hand, nevertheless. So basically what your argument is, explain it, say like why another argument was said, and then but nevertheless my argument still is you know, prevailing, or yeah, basically. And then acknowledge counter arguments, but ultimately reinforce your main argument. I keep saying arguments, but I understand, like, obviously from the last question that I answered, it's just like a point of view. Like, it doesn't actually mean like an argument. It just means your points in the essay. And they don't need to be long. I've already said that. Don't know why I said it twice. Yeah, so try not to add new, but utilize what you've already said. Yeah, basically. I hope that's all. And then if you go on the next one, Fiona. Referencing. Okay, so I will say here, this is like referencing just for books, and I've put how the books translate into bibliography and then a bit of illustrations. But the university referencing guide for history of art is what you need to like follow. Like that is what they will be marking you on from that essay guide. And the reason the essay guide is very much about referencing, and that's the reason why we've done this writing guide thing, because it's very like formal. That writing guide is about how you like just formally submit it, basically. So definitely go to that and double check before you submit your work, because that is the main point for like reference. And also, if you need extra guidance with referencing, contact like your tutor and stuff, because they are the ones marking your essays, so they will like, you know, give you the thumbs up for if they think it's right and things like that. So yeah, that's a good one. And academic family leaders, if you are in an academic family. So yeah, I've put here the books, first name, last name, book title in italics, and then place, publisher, date, and page number, and then shortened. So in the footnotes, you don't have to write that long one out every time. You can just put the author, the name of the book, and the page number. And then bibliography is basically like switching the name around and then changing some of the punctuation. So don't be stressed out about it. I was so confused in first year. I was like, it's completely different, but it's not. It's just a couple of changes, but make sure you double check them in the thing. So it's like different, you know, full stops and commas and things like that. And then illustrations, artwork, artist, name of work, and italics, date and current location is basically all. So obviously we'll be posting this so you can like reference this again, this what I've written, because we'll be posting it online so you can have a look at that again, but it is in the History of Art writing guide for that. Fiona, if you want to.
And then also with footnotes, please leave yourself time at the end of writing your essay. Do your footnotes. They always take longer than I think they're going to take. And I don't like doing them. They're really boring. So definitely try to like, I find as I'm writing, if I paraphrase a book or if I cite someone, I insert a footnote. I think it's like Command Shift F. It's like really simple. You can just like insert it, and then you just write like the page number and the author, and then later you can go back and put in the full footnote. But please footnote as you're going, and then give yourself time to do all the footnotes at the end, because they're really annoying to do. And make sure you have like formatting right, because that's like the easiest way to get points is to just have the correct formatting. So definitely check the writing guide.
And especially in first year, like try and give yourself a bit more time to like get familiar with it, because you're obviously not going to know it as well in that. And then common referencing mistakes. So there are a lot of traps people fall into. The second time you reference a book, you've got like shorten it, because tutors prefer this, and also like it doesn't take up your word count as much, because they'll pick up on that and be like, oh, you're using your word count for footnotes. Split up your bibliography into different formats. So when you get all of your bibliography, just when you're writing it, just write like book chapter, journal, you know, stuff like that, and then split it up into book chapter, journal, and then also in alphabetical order, within the different sections. And then double and triple check the use of italics and punctuation in referencing, because they are like make all the difference. As I said, like there's only a few changes between them, but like it's really easy to get caught out with like, oh, I thought that looked like a full stop, but it was actually a comma, or like, oh, I didn't realize that wasn't italics. So just double check everything basically. And and also like they expect you to make mistakes because you are like first years, so they are not gonna like penalize you the first time you have done it like in a proper university essay. So just don't worry too much, but just double check. And then if I go on the next one.
Yeah, by the way, with citations, really quick, on DiscoverEd and lots of other like places where you can find journals, there's often a button that clicks cite. So you can just click cite, make sure you're in the right format, which is Chicago, that the university uses. And then you can paste that right into your notes and right into your bibliography. So I'd say as you're reading and researching, cite everything as you go. because as Megan was saying earlier, it's much better to do like a little bit over time rather than like all of it at the end. So definitely, and then also there's lots of websites that can help you make citations. Like I think there's one that I use called like Chicago Citation Generator or something like that. Like, so if you're totally lost with this formatting, you have to make sure it's right, but there are lots of tools you can use online to help you. So yeah.
Okay, yeah, last minute checks. So it's always good to have like a last minute read, and also like if you're doing it in an evening or like late at night, give it like, if it's the night before, don't give it to like too close to the morning when it's due, but like give it like a couple of hours and then come back to it and read it again, because it's so easy to not like see mistakes. So I say, so make sure your essays are within the word limit, which is 2,000 words, and including footnotes and check your punctuation. Line spacing is, and margins is like just like a formal thing, but they still need to be done. Proofread, get another person to read your essay. They might not know what it's on about, but they will probably read it more and like spot your punctuation than you will. Once you have finished, remember to submit it in PDF form. That was a big thing. Like I did that wrong last year, and it was very stressful because I had to submit it so like close to the date, to the time, because I realized I'd submit it wrong. I don't and then check that you've got your submission receipt as well, and then relax over. And then the next one, Fiona?
Yeah, and I'd say just to add to this, with reading it through, on the last read through, I like to read it out loud to myself. Like obviously alone in your room, not like the middle of the library, but like read it aloud, because then you can hear all the mistakes, because often your brain will just like, because you've read it so many times, read it out loud, because often then you'll hear it and you'll be like, that sentence sounds weird, let me change it. And then also, which Megan was saying about having someone else to read your essay, you're in a class with a bunch of other people having to do the same thing. So I'd say definitely find a friend who's doing a different question, so you don't like risk plagiarism, and like peer edit, like switch off each other's essays and read them for each other and give back notes. Because I find as well, when I look at someone else's essay and see their mistakes, it helps me see my mistakes as well. So definitely do that. And don't be afraid to just like be a bit awkward and ask someone in your tutorial who you think is smart if you want to peer edit each other's essays, because like everyone's happy to have more help.
Also, another thing was there's an allowance either side of the word count. I can't specifically remember what it was from last year, but it's about like 100, 200 words. So it's in the writing guide, but just know that you don't have to be like 2,000 words exactly. There's like a little bit of allowance on either side for that.
Also, someone in that chat asked what does it mean to add illustrations? So those are just pictures. So it's art history, so you have to have pictures in your essay. So usually at the bottom of the essay, either before or after the bibliography, you'll have a section called illustrations, and that's all the artworks that you mentioned in the essay. And also as you're writing, you'll mention the artwork, and then you'll say like parentheses figure 1 or illustration 1. And then at the end, you'll put the picture, so then the grader can see it, and a full source of like who made it, what year, what gallery is it in, all of that, and where you got the image, like the gallery website or something. So yeah, you need illustrations because you're writing about visuals.
Yeah. But also don't use like loads of illustrations. I was told between like 3 and 4, don't like over, unless, especially at like pre-honors level, first and second year, don't use like loads and loads of artwork. It's not necessary.
I think it's good for an essay to be focused on 2 to 3 artworks, even just like 2, because once you start writing, you'll realize that 2,000 words is not as many as you thought.
Yeah.
Before we move on, Kathy just asked, when can you shorten footnotes? So basically, if you've mentioned a footnote first, so it's like Smith, so-and-so, the book and the page number, you put the full footnote. And then if you mention Smith again, then you can just say Smith page number, and you don't have to put the whole name of the book. And then along with this, if you cite the same source twice, like in a row, you can say IBID, which is like some abbreviation. I can't remember what it's for, but it's like IBID period. And then the page number, or if it's the same page, just that again. But that's only if it's right after in the footnotes. So that basically just means like as above. And this is also
I've never done that one actually.
This is also in the History of Art Writing Guide, which should be available on all of your as like a big PDF that the department.
Definitely reference the writing guides, because it'll be like more professional and what they expect from the history of art department. So definitely look at that.
And Alice just asked, yes, you do. Do you really need to include illustrations? Yes, you do. So illustrations is just a word for like an image of a painting. You don't have to put the website of where it's from, but you should just put like, if it's from like the Metropolitan Museum website, you should put like Metropolitan Museum. It's mostly like a source, like everything needs to be cited. You could put it in your bibliography if you use something on that website, like information from a gallery site, but usually it's better to use an academic text.
So with the first year questions, you get to pick one artwork from the ones they've given you. So you use that one artwork and obviously put the illustration of it so that the person marking it can see it. But then you'll have like one or two others to be like, okay, this has like the same message, or like this one has like the similar artist and things, just to back up your point, which is what illustrations are for.
And then so you add I'm just keep looking at the chat. You add the illustration at the end. So like it's a different section from my bibliography. I usually put it before the bibliography, but it can go at the end. But it's not within the paragraph. But you just say figure 1, and then that references your illustrations. And this is in the writing guide as well. And I just want to make sure I don't miss any of these. Before we move on, Francesca asked about choosing quotes. I would say you don't want to choose quotes that are visual analysis, because you can do the visual analysis. I think the quotes, like, that's a big word, but the quotes I think would be more like specific ideas about the artwork that aren't clear from looking at it. And also never just give a quote and don't analyze it. If you're giving a quote, you have to analyze it. And often in my essays, I rarely even use quotes. I usually paraphrase writers. If you're including a quote, you need to make sure that that quote is 100% necessary for your essay. Your essay should definitely not be just like stringing quotes together. You definitely want to like reference academics and papers, but you can often just paraphrase like this, can't remember any names of people. Like Smith described how Venus is like this. I agree with that, but like you can paraphrase people, and that still requires a footnote that always goes at the end of the sentence.
Okay.
But does that make sense?
Is that all the questions? So we'll go through the questions again at the end and check that we've not missed any for that as well. But we're just okay. So tips from academic parents. These are academic families. You should have got an email about academic families if you're in first year and want to sign up to have an academic parent. Basically, we're just like we're all second years history of art students that will just help you. We'll just like you can have us on. I have mine on a Facebook Messenger chat, and we just like they just ask me questions whenever they think of a question, or like we can like they can Zoom with you and like talk through things. Basically just to help you. So if you want to get involved with that, then you can email the committee email and just say like what year you're in, your name, your student number, and we'll try and sort that out for you guys. So mine are planning is key, because I'm so insistent on planning all the time, writing out everything you have to do in a week and breaking down those tasks. Breaking down tasks is so helpful. Like it makes me not be stressed about a whole list of things that you've got to do. Try not to sound smart. Using unnecessary terminology as your arguments will make less sense. So don't try and be like, make it sound like the readings that you have to read for lectures can sometimes have really fancy terminology. You don't need to sound like that in your essays. Like they won't expect it and they won't want it in your first year essays, or let alone any essay that you write in university. They just want it to be clear and a good argument. Always remember to include your references page number. I've already said that. And then Maeve has said, make clear connections between visual evidence and the arguments points. So make sure that you're linking your visual analysis to your arguments, and then address arguments from other authors and back up your own points. So look, you don't just use your opinion, use outside opinions, and then stay specific in your essays. Like I said, don't try and research everything and tackle everything. Like you're never going to be able to do it. It's not going to work. Nishi said, don't stress about doing every single lecture reading in first year. Yeah, I would say some of them are like essential, so like you have to like skim through them and get like information off them at least, but don't try and do like every recommended or further or like things like that. And if it's like confusing, don't try and like spend hours trying to read it. Just do like main points, write it down, and then move on, because it's just not worth it. Start readings early for your essay, so your argument is properly structured and coherent. Yeah, that's a good one, so that you're not like getting loads of information within a week of trying to write your essay, because you won't have time to like understand the information and then properly like lay it out and see what you've got. It will just be a lot of information too quickly and it'll be confusing. And then she said try and have fun, which is a good point in first year, is mainly try and have fun and trying to get used to everything. Can we move on to the next one if that's okay, Fiona? And then Marike, try not to veer off tangents, stay on topic in your essays. This is very like a good one, because I'm like I do this a lot. I try and like go off and find different points, but just try and stay on what you've said and try and stay with the artwork that you've said or the points you've set across. Dissertations are a good starting place for research. They're often easier to read than academic journals. However, be careful not to plagiarize. Yeah, they're good for like reading and getting information and understanding from the text, but don't like take dissertations and like use them too much, because they are people's like own essays and works. So they're just like a good starting point for information. Work with others and talk about your ideas out loud. Yeah, that's a good one, because people like, obviously everyone has different opinions, everyone has different strengths, weaknesses, and talking about it is so helpful to understand and get other people's points of views. Laura, keep all your ideas in one place, writing down things in a dedicated notebook and on a laptop. Have like a specific place for history of art stuff, have a specific section for essay stuff, and then readings, and then lectures, and then tutorials. Like those are the 4 main sections that I have on my laptop, and it's so helpful to have them there. Pick a topic or a question that interests you. Like we said earlier, you'll just get bored. It's not worth it. Just pick one that's interesting and that you think is like will be good to answer, and then color code your drafts based on the key terms of your question. So a little bit like I said with the organization, take like key points of, so the 3 questions the first years have to answer, color code them into like 3 questions, and then go through your essay at the end and be like, have I answered these 3 things, or like mention these 3 things in my essay, so that you know that you're covering what they've asked you to cover. Hannah, create a schedule, plan how many hours a day you're going to spend on writing or researching. That's a good one, like mine, planning your day, breaking it down, making sure that you're not like, okay, I'm going to be writing all day, and then you spend the whole day writing. It's just too much. You need like, okay, I'm going to be writing for 2 hours, then I'll do like a lecture, and then I'll like write for another hour, and then, you know, like break it down. Check your essay for plagiarism. There's a lot of websites listed on Learn that can help you with that. Yeah, plagiarism is a scary thing. Like I thought I was going to plagiarize so much in first year. I was like, oh my God, like everything is plagiarism. It's too much. Like I'm going to get caught. I'm going to get kicked out. But like, it's not. It's just don't. If you're using people's arguments, just footnote it and like put it in your bibliography and be like, this argument was, you know, used by this person. And it's basically just not taking credit for other people's work. Read it 2 times when you're about to submit. It really helps you find small mistakes. And don't read it after you've submitted. Yeah, don't read it after you've submitted. You'll just kill yourself and be like, oh, there's a comma, added this point in, there's no point, just leave it and move on with your life. Like there's no point going over and over again. So yeah, they're the activities, advice, and then yeah, hopefully that's helpful for you. And then don't panic. Okay, so this is your first essay and you're expected to make mistakes. This is a guide on how to write an history of art essay, not a definitive structure, so don't worry about following every step meticulously. And if you do panic and run out of time, which happens, like people have things that like happen, you could, especially now, like things happen all the time, you can't predict it, like some things just fall to the wayside a little bit and you don't have time. But what we'd say is we don't advise leaving your essay to the last minute, but we do know the situations are unavoidable. Pick the question that you would be easiest for you. Don't spend ages deciding and stick with it. Like changing your question last minute will take more time than it's worth. and like it will just be more confusing than it's worth, because all your notes will be mixed and it's just not like a good thing. Find two sources for context and a further. Okay, so this is really specific. Like I wrote it as like a guideline, but you don't have to. Like it's just finding like some context ones that aren't about specific stuff, and then maybe like 2 or 3 sources that were like relevant to what you're saying or things like that. But again, this is like just like a not a definitive structure. Journals are key. They are easier to read, and they like you'll be able to go through them quicker. And also, like Fiona said earlier, looking on the reading list at the recommended and further reading, because they have been picked by the lecturers, so they're obviously good articles and books. So you know that they are going to be good for your essay, and they're a good starting point. If you don't have time to like go and find loads of different sources, you can use the majority of sources from the reading list and then find like a few external ones that you found yourself. And then if we go on to the next one, Fiona.
Yeah. And then with this, I'd just say it is possible to get an extension for your essay. Like if you end up being sick that week or something happens, or like one time I had an essay due at the beginning of the semester in January from last semester, and I was like flying internationally and I was so tired and such a mess. And just like you can, if it's, I think like a day or 2 before it's due, you can email, I can't remember exactly who, I think you email like your course organizer or like the whole history of art department organizer, and you just like ask for an extension, explain your problem, be honest with them, and more often than not they'll give you an extension of like a few days. But yeah, so that is possible. Like it is possible to get an extension, like not indefinitely of course, and they're not long, it'll be like a few days, maybe at the most a week, but you know, like there's a certain timeline everything has to happen for like the department to get grades out and stuff. But like if it's like if it's really bad and you're really stressed out and you have mental health or any issues or health issues in general, you can get an extension. So there's always a way, there's always another way. And also in general, even if you feel like your essay is really bad, if you have 2,000 words and you have footnotes and a bibliography, it's better to submit that than like to submit late. So definitely like just submit something. Also, you guys might know this already, but the way the history of art degree works is 3rd and 4th year are honors. So the grades you get in those years directly apply to like your degree title, like a first or a second. But in 1st and 2nd year, you really just have to pass. So like you should do well, especially because it's practice for future years, but don't feel pressure to be like, oh, I have to get an A, I have to get a B. Like it's okay if your essays are not the best. This is like your first experiment into art history. Is the time to learn and grow. And then definitely pay attention to the feedback you get, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah. So yeah, this is
special. So I've written out the different like things. And also like looking on the university website, you'll find different things, but obviously there's learning difficulties, special circumstances, and then the course organizer, if you have, they don't deal with like the extensions and stuff, but if you have like questions you know, regarding like course content or assessments, they will be there as well to answer questions. And then mental health support, I've listed a few places there that are in the uni, and then the NHS has like a list of websites that look at different, like show you different websites for helpful for different things. So yeah, that's there if you want it, and obviously you can look back at this because it's being recorded, you can look back. The next one, questions. Okay, so we've got a couple of questions that were submitted that I'm going to go through first, and then we will look at the other one.
Yeah, so if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. But yeah, and also you could turn your mic on if you want. Or I'm not sure if you can raise your hand in here. I can't remember. Okay. But yeah. So
I'll do these ones first, and then we'll open it up to the floor.
I'm gonna stop sharing the screen.
Okay. So how do you come up with original things to say about an artwork when it's already been intensively studied and written about? I would say like they're not expecting you to like write some sort of like groundbreaking essay that's like showing a whole new opinion on like something that's never been thought of before. Like it's not about that. It's just about your like own, how you put together the argument, and your own, like you will have things to say that are original, like like a little bit, even if it's like a little bit of visual analysis, or like, oh, I did these 2 readings and they link somehow, like there's always something you will be able to say. But like, you don't have to come up with original things about an artwork that's been around for centuries and everyone's studied it, and it's like a massive, like, it's not, you don't have to worry about that, in that, if that makes sense.
Remember as well that it's also a test to see how you react to the materials on the course. They want to see how, what they've given to you, what they've represented, what they've shown you, how you've interpreted that. And I mean, sometimes if you do, you know, if you can't come up with an original idea, which, you know, no one comes up with original ideas anymore, you know, not for like the last 10,000 years or so. I mean, they can still, you know, it's helpful for the lecturers to see how individuals respond to the course, how their learning has progressed, which is an important part of the first kind of starter essay and then the second essay. So yeah.
And they're really like, what you're being graded on is how is your like analysis and your critical thinking, and showing that through your writing. So you want to show your thought process and show that you did research and you care about this and you're trying to figure it out. Like, they're not grading you on like, are you the best art historian ever who's 18 years old? Like, they're grading on you and like, can you think? Can you analyze? Have you soaked information up from the course? Not just content, but also the ways of looking at things and the ways of analyzing objects.
Yeah. The next one is, how do you go about finding relevant sources for an essay, both in the library and online? I think we like touched on that in the PowerPoint. So like, that's just finding them on DiscoverEd is the main source, because that's everything the uni has to hold to do with those arguments. And then external ones are like JSTOR and websites like that that are useful. But obviously I listed them in the thing. You can go back and look at them in the request.
And also you might find sources that end up not being useful. Like, don't feel bad or feel like you've wasted time. Like, when you find a source, you'll often have to like skim it. And I recommend reading the introduction and scrolling down and reading the conclusion. Also, if you're online, you can do like Command F, and that's like command find, and you can like search a word and see if it pops up in the article or in like the text if it's like a PDF. But don't feel bad if you like it feels like it's hard to find sources, or you're finding too many sources. Like, it's all a process. And often with that, I think we talked about this a bit, but different people write in different ways. I know some people who read everything and then they do all their writing, or some people, they read a bit and then they write a bit, and then they find that they need to read some more and they write some more. So really find what works for you and experiment. Everyone works in different ways. So yeah.
Yeah. And then the last one on the one we've been submitted is how are you supposed to frame a debate or argument in reference to a piece that doesn't have much literature debating in it per se? Is this like?
I would say you can still talk about, like, it seems like the question is, how do you
I was trying to figure out
that hasn't been extensively written about. That actually might be fun because you're writing something that hasn't been written about a lot, but people have definitely written about that artist, or they've written about that time period, maybe other artworks that artist has made at the same time period, or art by other artists at the same time and place. And then you can use their analysis and apply it to your artwork. Of course, the artwork you're studying. Of course, it's not going to be exactly the same. And then also visual analysis, which is basically just fancy phrase for saying looking at an artwork and like deducing information from it. And also, so what you can use your visual analysis, I recommend to start every essay after you kind of give the kind of roadmap, like the introduction, then start by a very in-depth, detailed visual description. We're basically just describing the artwork, paint the picture for the reader in their mind. Like, imagine they've never seen this artwork before, they don't study art history, explain this artwork to them, and also why you care about it. Why is it interesting to write about? Why does it matter? Start with that, and that should be the basis for your essay. The basis for your paper should always be the artwork itself, the object itself, and then bring in other sources. So you can research, but you're going to be researching a bit more broadly, like about the artist themselves, and maybe if it's specific, you're researching the medium or the way the techniques it was made with. Does that make sense? But yeah. Megan, Caroline, do you have anything to add?
I would just say, like, even if that specific artwork, like Fiona said, hasn't been like debated or whatever, there's always like context that you can apply to it and stuff. So there's always something out there about it. I looking through the chat, some of them have been answered by Caroline. So how do you propose your own argument? We said that with the other one. And then taking it as an elective, how do I make sure that I'm developing my own arguments? I think they're more like, you're in the same, it's actually quite good to take it like as an elective, like, because you're like, I don't know, it's, if you're in first year as an elective, you're in like the same boat, so it doesn't matter. And like, even if you're in 2A as an elective, like you're still like in the same pond as everyone else, because even second years are still like, even I'm a bit like confused about some things and things like that. So I wouldn't worry too much about taking it as an elective. It's the same, like we're all in the same boat.
The only thing I would say is like, just even though that's not your degree, make friends with people in that course on that degree.
Yeah.
Like through all of my studies, like from high school until now, I find the best thing is to have friends with people who are studying the same thing as you, so you can casually talk about it and debate it and like get into it. And also you can help each other. Like I find that's my favorite way to like study for exams, is to like meet up with a friend and just like explain the topics to each other and ask each other questions. But yeah, so I'd say if you're doing it as an elective and just in general, try to make friends with the people on your course and go to office hours and stuff like that if you're not sure what's happening.
Yeah, and then it said, Sophie said, if a question we've chosen is asking about one or two particular artworks, can we talk about the artworks are relevant or just focus on the ones in the question? So obviously you have to focus on the ones in the question for the main argument, but you can always do like, maybe if you're doing two particular artworks, I'd only do like one or two extra arguments and as like a backing up. Like I wouldn't go into like massive depth with them, like just use them to back up your point. But yeah, obviously focus on the ones in the question, but like only use external like artworks that they've not given you as like a backing up, or you know, if they really reassert the argument.
And also you really don't have like space in your essay to like deeply analyze another artwork. So you could mention another artwork, but only as like a kind of comparison or like a kind of a brief explanation of like, this is related to this other famous work, or as kind of context, but you really don't have space in your essay to like deeply analyze that. And I found in my previous essays, by including too many artworks, it gets bogged down and I end up not actually having enough space to give like enough analysis. But yeah, also when you're like proofreading and editing your essays, you have to be able to like kill your darlings, as it says. Like sometimes there's things you've written that either there's not space for them because you've gone over the word count, or like they end up not actually fitting the argument. You have to be comfortable with like deleting paragraphs if they don't work in the essay. Yeah, that's also something you'll get used to, and you'll get a better feel once you get feedback on this essay, how to do better next semester as well.
Yeah, that's the main thing. Like this is, if you're in first year, this is your first essay, so they're expecting you to build off of this one. This is like just them seeing where you're at and like what you can do as like a basis point. And then Sadie said, should I make I statements, i.e. e.g. I agree? I know that sometimes this is discouraged. I don't know about you two, but I've always been told don't use I in an essay because it's not about you. It's about like you treat the essay as like a writing that is academic. So it's not about you personally. It's about like the research.
So basically you can, Caroline, you can say it.
Sorry. You need to be able to detach yourself from it, so that way it doesn't look as though you've got any personal stake in it, because if you're bringing kind of a personal involvement, if you've got underlying feelings towards the topic, that's going to impact your writing. So people might think this isn't a trustworthy source. So if you try and detach yourself from it as much as possible and make it seem as though, it sounds silly, but you want it to look as though the paper just appeared, like just like
well,
no one wrote it just happened. Like try and do that if you can.
Yeah, well also like if you have like your own idea, you can include that, but you shouldn't necessarily use the phrase I. Like you can just say, instead of saying I think, it's implied that you think this because you've just written it down. So you can just say, from looking at these sources and from looking at this detail of the painting, this is da 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 da. But anything you say in the essay has to be backed up. So you have to either back it up with details in the painting, a source, or something else. So you can give your own ideas, but they shouldn't be in first person. You can also see in text that text that you read for the course, most of them are not written in first person, even though they are giving like not personal, but like ideas specific to the author. Does that, if that makes sense?
Yeah, that applies to everything, like in first person, not just I, like even if like in like my opinion or whatever, like don't try not to use them. Just is, yeah, their most academic sources aren't in first person because it's a piece of like research instead of just you. And then see the exam in December, what kind of images do they ask, as we need to identify their names are, and are those images do those images come from lecture readings? I'll let you guys take these ones.
Yeah, so like exams, I think they're adapted a little bit, but from our previous knowledge of what exams have been like before, there'll be pictures and then there'll be like an essay question. And also we'll do another event about exams later in the semester. So don't worry about them too much right now. Maybe worry about your essay and like week to week things. You can worry about, you have time to worry about your exams later on. But just to quickly note on this, the pictures they choose will likely be ones that you will recognize if you've been paying attention through the course. And then also you are meant to identify them, but the points, they care way more that you can analyze the artwork and describe it and say why it's important in its historical context than that you get like the date perfect or you misspell the like something in the name. Does that make sense? Where it's like they're looking about, they want to know that your critical thinking is there and you can analyze something. So if you recognize a painting and you're like, oh, I know it's from the Dutch Golden Age and it's by this artist, but I can't remember exactly what it's called. That isn't the most important thing. You want to like get a mostly their date, name, artist, but then they care way more about what you write afterwards, about your analysis of it.
Yeah, I would, in my like lecture notes and stuff, I always write down like the images that they're referencing, or like screenshot it on my laptop, the image that they're referencing, just so that you have all the images of like the artworks, or if you're writing it down, like write the artworks so that you can later on know which ones they were talking about. And generally, you know, like I'm haven't done an exam yet, but I did it for like other subjects. Generally, you know, if something comes up like if something comes up in a lecture, a reading and a tutorial, or like just a lecture and a reading, that is like one of the main works they're like wanting you to look at, because it's come up multiple times for multiple like discussions, so that's a piece that they're interested in. So but yeah.
And also you'll see like some lectures, they'll spend like 30 minutes of the lecture talking about like this one painting or this one artist. So in previous years, they've given us a list of like key artworks, but that's more just like a starting off point. And then often, like we'll talk about this more at another event, but like when, like it's been an hour, so I'll probably wrap up soon. But when revising, what I like to do is like have all my pictures in a document, like all the images, and then add my notes along with them. Because even in an exam, when you write an essay, you have to reference pictures, like image artworks. So knowing the artworks is important, but don't feel like super stressed about remembering that it was in like 1583 or something. Like that isn't the most important. It's more important that you can analyze it and you know like discussion points around it. Did you have any more questions about essays?
Well, no, I don't. If anyone's got any more questions, if you like, put them in the chat now. But someone's asked about what lecture content is relevant to exam revision. We are probably going to do like an exam event like this as well, closer to the date. So like there's going to be like, you know, go through that, and they also will go through that in your lectures and stuff. They'll have specific lectures dedicated to exam revision, especially like with during COVID and everything. They will like, you know, go over it a bit more.
They usually have a class at the end of the semester called the Big Tutorial, where all the teachers come back. It's kind of like, you know, Hall of Fame or like clip show end of the season, where all the teachers come back and they each give like kind of a brief revision of their subject. And this will be like in a lecture, and then it's meant to like kind of be exam prep. And most classes, including like honors classes, they'll have like an exam prep class where the teacher goes back through like all of the course content. So as long as the staff don't go on strike again, like we should have an exam prep class.
I think it's also
But don't worry about that right now. Worry about the essay.
Yeah, exactly. The exam is obviously very important, and it's something that you should definitely keep kind of in the back of your mind. But right now the focus is your essay. So it's going to be like what 50-50 exam essay. So the 50 that you can deal with right now is the essay. The 50 that's the exam you can deal with later on. So just try and like remember, like obviously keep an idea in mind that you've got an exam in the future. You know, if something comes up that you think this seems like something that they're trying to like really get the point home, that might be useful to kind of like, you know, like put a little star next to it and be like exam question mark. But for now, just concentrate on your essay mostly.
Yeah.
And enjoy the course. Like you have lectures all the time, and like I find if you enjoy the content, you're more likely to like pick it up in your brain, and then when it comes time for revision, like and studying for the exam, you're more likely to kind of have remembered it. So and ask questions, like have fun in tutorials, ask lots of questions, don't be afraid to ask stupid questions. Also, you can go to staff office hour. Like if you're writing your essay and you really want to ask the lecturer something about their topic, you can go to office hours. They all have office hours and they want to talk to students. So yeah, I hope this helped. Thank you guys so much for coming. Caroline, do you have any wrapping up?
Yeah, I was going to say something as well.
So, I mean, just one last thing and then I'll be really fast. So one thing that I struggled with when I was in first year was, as you can hear, I'm not very posh. So I used to think that I had to write down my notes as if like I was like writing an essay. So my notes from first year are just totally illegible. They're just full of big words that I don't understand. Sometimes the best thing to do is write it as you would speak it. Write it as if you were explaining it to your best friend, your mom, your dad, your dog. Just try and make sure that you get it in a way that you understand, and then worry about making it sound better later on down the line.
Yeah, I'd say first drafts should be bad. Like for your first draft, the goal is to get words on the page and get your ideas out. It does not matter how it sounds or if like you keep repeating the same words and say interesting too many times. Like just in my opinion, different people write in different ways, but my first drafts are always just like keyboard smashing my first thoughts and ideas. You could even write like a first paragraph before you even start researching of just what you remember from the lectures and what you're thinking. And a lot of your first draft may get deleted by the final draft. But I find just to get in the practice to warm yourself up to writing, it really helps to just like don't think of it as precious. You're just typing. No one's going to see this. They're going to see what you submit in the end. So yeah, that's my philosophy about it.
I'd just like to reassert at the end before we leave, this is like for first year, you have to get 40% in your essay and exam. You have to get 40% in them both to pass. And then for second year, it's 50%. And I know that sounds a lot, like 40% and 50%, like that's nearly half and like is half. But like it's not like, don't try and get like, oh, I've got to get like a 70 or 80%. Like it's like, you've just got to get 40 to pass, and they just are going to use that as like a starting point for you. So don't like, obviously you need to like try your hardest and like, you know, get as best as you can, but like do not stress too much and just like try and use and just show what you can do basically, and just try your hardest. The old cliche, just try your best, and then you can build on that in like next year's.
Yeah, totally.
I don't know if we've got any more questions or anything, but I think we've gone through most of them. And if anyone has any more questions, they can email us or message us on the Facebook Messenger, like directly, if you don't want to email us for any questions or anything.
Thanks everyone so much for coming. If you fail the essay, can you resubmit? I think you can resit the class in the summer. I'm not totally sure. But I don't think you will fail the essay because you're at this event and you're already thinking about your essay, which is way better than I probably was in first year. I think I wrote an essay way too late.
So you're already ahead of most people.
You are already if you're worried about failing the essay, it means that you won't fail the essay, especially like this far out. Like it's obvious that you care and you're going to put time into this. Also, like we're all stuck at home. In first year, I was like out every night. So you have plenty of time. So I'd say try to have fun. That was like kind of dark, but yeah. Otherwise, I hope everyone has a lovely end of October. Happy Halloween next week.
Yeah,
And we
that's
will
helpful.
recording this, and we're going to post it on our YouTube channel and then share it on our social media as well. So you'll be able to see it all there again. If you need it, share it with your friends. Thank you guys so much for coming. Megan, Caroline, me.
Someone later on, self promo, wink, wink.
What?
Exam one we're gonna have later on. Just keep an eye.
Yes,
Yeah.
we are going to have another event probably in like November, December about the exam.
Yes. Okay. Perfect. Thank you so much for coming, guys.
Thank you.
My dog just made a